Everybody, it's Joe from Gadgetry Tech, and the video that a lot of people have been asking me for is finally here. This is a culmination of months of work, a lot of stuff going behind the scenes, and what I think is going to completely change how we EQ headsets, IEMs, and headphones going forward in the context of gaming, because as you will learn later in this video, I'm doing something very different. Now, this tool is completely free. I didn't want to gatekeep anything. I had the option to kind of like paywall the access to it, but I don't think that's best for the community. So everything is free. Now, I will have links in the description below for Patreon, PayPal, and you can use YouTube Super Chat, but don't feel obligated in any way. I don't do this specifically to make money, but that was the path I wanted to take. I will have links in the description below for that stuff, but it will also serve as an update area as well, because as this video grows and develops and people watch and provide feedback, I will likely update the description later and also pin a comment to help kind of keep everyone on track or address burning questions. Now, I have chapters provided to make it easier to find what you're looking for, but if this is your first time watching this, then I suggest trying to watch as much as you can from start to finish. Maybe skip the ending if you don't need to know about how to set up software for EQ. But if you know a friend, content creator, streamer, whatever it may be that could benefit from this, I only ask that you share it with them, because I really think this is going to help a lot of people. I can't tell you how many months and hours I've used testing this to confirm all of this work. Even though I've spent a lot of time, I know nothing can ever be perfect. So in the description, I actually have a Google form to help, I guess, understand where you're coming from. Was your headset missing? Are you missing an IEM or a headphone? What can we do different with the tune to further improve it? So look out in the description for that if you could be so kind as to provide your feedback, because I do care about what you all think. Now, this video also includes stuff for console players in addition to PC. This isn't like only if you're a PC player you can benefit from it, and I will give you some tips along the way so all platforms can get a better experience. So with that being said, let's start with the game settings themselves. All right, so I want to talk about the game audio, but I do want to address two very important things. One is we can't EQ or adjust the sounds that aren't there. And at the current state, there is a massive issue with Warzone in terms of prioritizing audio objects, which means sometimes you just flat out don't hear anything. You can climb a ladder sometimes and not make a sound, or at least even if you're making a sound, the enemy may not hear you, which obviously works the other way and why we often get killed from behind. Sometimes parachute noises don't work. So this all has to do with something called object prioritization, or audio objects. When you're in a game, you have an object for wind, you have an object for the ladder, vehicles in the distance, an explosion, birds, building creaks. All of this stuff is an object in game in addition to yours, your teammates, and enemy footsteps. And sometimes, thanks to the large mix of all of these objects coming and going, some of them get forgotten behind. And unfortunately, a lot of the critical ones are the ones that are getting fallen behind. The other big issue with the game right now is something called ambient occlusion, because it's extremely inconsistent. And what that means is there's an object in between you and the audio cue. Let's say a person is running outside, but you have a pane of glass. Well, how much audio should that pane of glass reduce the sound to where you can't hear the footsteps? Some buildings are completely see-through in terms of audio, and others are an iron fortress and you can't hear anything just on the opposite side of a wall. They're fixing a lot of that, and a lot of times when you see the new game notes, they're talking about ambient occlusion. So just to give you an example, I'm still talking here. Here is an object, it's a pane of glass, ambient occlusion, now there's something interacting with it. That affects how the game engine works as well, and that's one of the things that they're constantly tweaking. So let's get into the game audio settings itself. For audio mix, I pick headphones on both console and PC. Some people use the PC speaker one right here, which has a crazy tight dynamic range. My issue with that is it makes things like airstrikes really loud as well. It compresses it so almost everything is the same volume, which could help with footsteps if you're in a very quiet moment, if you will, where there's not a lot going on. You're trying to hear a footstep as soon as possible. There's a slight edge to PC speaker, but as the scene gets more chaotic and builds up, it's just too much for me, so I stick with headphones. You can always do bass boost if you want more bass, but we can do that with EQ later. So, and on the console side, you have the option for like TVs, TV speaker. That's a similar thing to the PC speaker side on here. However, it actually reduces sub bass as well, so you lose some low frequencies. You can always mess with it, but again, I think headphones is the way to go. As far as your output settings, I pretty much always leave it as stereo. I don't touch that. And if you expand the volume, the important thing here is you can leave the game volume at 100%. That's your master volume, basically, and the effects are all of the game audio, basically. You know, all your footsteps, stuff breaking, airstrikes, everything comes through there. Gameplay music volume, I don't want to hear anything competing with the stuff I care about, so I set it to 0. Dialogue volume, I set to 20. You know, when you have a vocal cue in the game telling you the gas is coming or whatever it is, I don't want that overpowering what I'm actually trying to hear. So I reduce it down to 20. The cinematic volume is pretty self-explanatory. I don't really care either way. This won't affect gameplay, but I just set it to 0. And then war tracks is hearing your music play in the vehicle as you drive, which can also include your teammates if you're riding with them. Another thing that's important to address is how loud your friends are. Now, you can do that with game to chat mix, or, you know, depending on what your audio equipment is, you can adjust it here. My friends are pretty loud, so I reduce the volume quite a bit because I don't want to hear them over certain cues if I'm, you know, prioritizing Gulag, for example. And if we scroll down, I also want to show you a few other settings at the bottom. Leave mono audio off because you actually want to hear your left and right channels. Reduce tinnitus sound is on because that dulls the effect of flashing concussion grenades. War tracks as a passenger, personal preference. Juggernaut music is very loud when it plays, but usually you don't hear it, of course, so I leave that off anyway. Hit marker sound effects is the only other wild card here because when I'm shooting someone, I don't need to hear the ticking sound when I'm shooting them. I know if I'm shooting them, and I'd rather hear more audio cues that I actually care about. So the less stuff I'm competing with, the better. Now, perhaps the most important thing you can do for game audio in Warzone, in addition to those other settings, is enabling the flex perk in slot 4. So if I go to edit this class and I look at my available options, there's a lot of good, important perks in the 4th slot. Now, a couple of these you can get from ground loot. You know, they have Ghost, which if you have the stealth vest or the comm vest for bird's eye, so you can get an extra perk later, but there's no vest in game that's going to give you the flex perk, so I recommend doing it. If you read it, it says delayed triggered explosives when you're sprinting, warns of nearby equipment, so if you ever pick up the Legionnaire ground loot as far as like a perk package go, and you start hearing beeping, that's because you're near an enemy claymore or radar or something like that. That is from the flex perk. It also reduces combat noise, which is pretty dramatic. Take a listen to this and how it affects the game audio. Pretty crazy, right? Now, what's even crazier is there is a hidden perk or ability from the flex perk that allows you to hear footsteps even further away. I mentioned the whole ambient occlusion thing before, and there are times where someone could be like 50 to 75 meters out, and I can hear them clear as day, so loud that I think they're right next to me. So the flex is kind of a weird perk that you're not always going to get consistent results on. However, it does more consistently than not allow you to hear footsteps farther away. And because this is a perk in game, that means all platforms can benefit from this. All right, so now that we've covered the game settings, let's talk about EQ. And in order to apply any EQ, you either need software on your computer, the Dolby Atmos app on Xbox, or some type of headset or DAC that has the ability to adjust sound profiles. Now, products like the Creative G6 or the Quiddle X5K both work on PlayStation 5 with mic support, meaning you can do custom EQs on PlayStation as well. These first examples I'm about to show you are EQ profiles that work with anything in general. It's a much simpler approach. However, it's not the game-changing EQ that I was talking about earlier. If your product's not listed or you just want to start with something very simple and easy to use, these next few pictures are going to show you various examples of what you'd want to enter in depending on, you know, if you're using Sonar, the Dolby Atmos app, a 10-band EQ like on something like the Creative G6, whatever it may be. So with that being said, here are those presets now. All right, now it's time to talk about advanced EQ and where I think all of this work is going to pay off, and at least I hope, because I really want it to help a lot of people. This is a totally revolutionary way to tune headsets, IEMs, and headphones specific to games. And the reason why is if you use a generic EQ preset shared by a community member or a Sonar, for example, that's applying the same EQ to every single headset, regardless of what it sounded like in the first place. So yeah, if you have something very bass heavy, like the HS55 wireless core, look how much bass that headset has. And even if you go to the Corsair HS80, also from Corsair, totally different sound profile. And because of this, one generic EQ is not going to give you the same exact result, and it may sound better or worse depending on what you own. This is what I'm trying to change because I want to basically fix or make what you own as good as possible. So I want to give you another example that's important to consider too. I'm going to scroll down. Let's say I have the SteelSeries Nova Pro wireless. Great wireless headset. It's loaded with features, and you also can swap pads. One of the popular things people did with the Nova Pro is they changed to a Wicked Cushion freeze pad. So what I did was I measured it to, let's change the color here, to show you the difference in sound quality when you do a pad swap. Some of these are more dramatic than this. I know the Astro A50X, for example, is a huge change in quality. So if I click that and you look at the Wicked Cushion freeze pad right here, look at that sound profile difference. So you wouldn't want to use the same EQ. Even if you don't understand what all of these measurements mean, it's important to see that visually they look different. Now, the left side, if you play around with the site, I will have a link in the description below. It gives you some information as far as what the frequencies are. You can see sub bass, and there's a write-up here. Presence region, mid-range, vocals, all of these affect the way games, music, and movies sound to your ear. So let's say I have the SteelSeries Nova 7. You can see the way the sound profile is. It's actually not a bad sound profile, a little bright up here. But what you can do, if you see where it says gaming targets right here, this dotted line is what I think is an ideal sound profile for an on-ear headset or headphone. And if you look at it compared to the way the SteelSeries Nova 7 measures, they don't quite line up. The same thing happens when you look at a Roccat SynMax Air. Again, totally different sound signature. Corsair or Sennheiser HD560S. All of these are different compared to that line. So this is the advanced part. Now, if you click on Equalizer up here, once you've selected your headset and enabled this target, click Equalizer, and on the left-hand side, you have all of these bars. This is how we can adjust the sound profile. So I'm going to click Auto EQ and watch this. That was in real time. I'm going to click the circle down here at the bottom to change the color. But through the use of Auto EQ, it just generated a custom EQ profile specific to the Nova 7 for Warzone. So, and then again, if you had a different headset with a different pad, you're going to get completely different EQ settings on the left. But the end result is you bring your headset or headphone or IEM in line with the target. By the way, just so I don't forget, if you see IEMs here at the top and you click on it, I have a bunch of in-ear monitors as well. If you want to look for an in-ear monitor that doesn't happen to be listed here, I'm going to show you something real quick as well. If you go to Super Review, he's a good buddy of mine. He measured tons and tons, let's go to dark mode, of IEMs. He has a great YouTube channel for IEMs and some other audio products. I'll have a link in the description below. But if he has the IEM that's not on my measurement site, you can click on it. Let's say it's the KZ ASX. And down here at the bottom, you can click this little download link. That will export the file. Once you've downloaded that file to your computer, you can actually go over here and it says upload FR. If you click that and upload that file you just saved, you can bring that into this tool to calibrate it to fit your particular product. As far as I know, I'm the only one that has a database full of gaming headsets, but I just wanted to mention that in case. So now that you've received this auto EQ and we can bring your Nova 7 to sound amazing in Warzone, it's time to implement it. So you have two major options on the PC side. One is Sonar, and you can see even the Meze Empyrean 2, a $3,000 headphone, has a very different sound signature than something like the Corsair HS Pro Surround or the Basin MT Pro IEMs. All of these are different. To clone what you see, I'm just going to move this over to make it simple. You can see these numbers here. If I enable, let's create new, and we're going to call this Nova 7 Warzone. We're going to compress and not do all of this, but all I have to do, you see where it says 26 hertz. So I'm going to click the first dot. Let's type 26. Then it says a gain of minus 11.9 dB. So I'm going to do minus 11.9. You can obviously round to 12 here, but let's type that in. And it has a Q of 0.6. So we're going to do a Q of 0.6. Then it says 56 hertz. We're going to do a gain of 1.8. So what I'm typing, or 1.8 dB. So I'm going to type 5.6 and click enter. Then I'm going to click on gain and hit 1.8 dB with a Q of 4.2. Now I'm building the sound profile I like specific to Call of Duty. And I'm not going to do every single one here in the interest of time, but as you iterate through all of this and type them in, it's slowly going to come to form and you're going to have the ideal sound profile for your headset. I even skipped one, minus 4.5. And that one has a Q of 1.9, which is adjusting how wide or narrow I'm making my adjustment. And you see how it's starting to shape. I'm going to boost. I think we have 79 is the only one that's missing right now. So let's just do the base one to show you something cool. So I'm going to type 79 hertz and we're going to do minus 6.8. With a Q of 2.9. So I have my sound signature or my EQ in the bass region that's going to fix the Nova 7 sound profile to have super clean bass so it stands out and I don't have all the rumbling effects competing with it. If you find that this is too much bass or not enough bass for your particular headset, the reason why I like Sonar is I can drag this up or down slightly. So it's pretty awesome that we can do it. Now you can share this. Let's say you made the Nova 7 EQ, again, to support the community. If you made one that is a copy of this, you can always type that in the comments below, click share and generate a title for it and post that link in comments. And then people can click it and it'll import automatically to save time. I'm going to eventually do my own database to make this easier, but it's very time consuming, as you can tell. So this is the manual way to do it, and that's to use Sonar. And again, the same thing happens where you can boost or reduce treble. But what we're doing is basically building a target curve through EQ. So you can see how powerful this is. Now, the other way to do EQ, if you want it to be fully automatic on Windows, is if you have Equalizer APO installed and you're using the Piece add-on, which I'll have links for that software. It looks like this once you're all set up and running. I can actually click the export button down here at the bottom left. Let's save that to my desktop here. And we're going to call it SteelSeries Nova 7 Warzone. Actually, I would say WZ3. I don't even know what the new Warzone is now, but I'm going to hit save. Then we're going to go to Piece and I'm going to hit import, which is just, it's a weird interface, but if you see the little import button where my mouse is moving, I'll click that. And there it is, SteelSeries Nova 7 Warzone 3. Hit open. Do I want to replace the current equalization? Yes. And as long as it's saved, you didn't lose it. All of my EQ settings from the website are already done. I'm completely ready to go and play the game. You will notice a slight reduction in volume because you can see pre-amplifying up here is now minus 8 decibels. That's because it's doing its best to make sure you don't have any distortion. When you see the plus 8.3 over here, you usually want your preamp to compensate for that so you're not boosting certain levels above a maximum threshold. If it's too quiet, you can always slowly increase this and it'll still work and most people won't hear the distortion, but I just want to explain why in case you notice a volume change. Now you can do this with tons of IEMs and headphones and headsets and save it. So I'm going to click the save button on the bottom left here and there it is, Nova 7 WZ3. I'm going to make that one purple and hit save. And now I have my list right here. So as I build things and mess around with different settings, I can choose whichever product I'm using that night and my preset's already done and ready to go. Now what's really cool is if you bought the Quiddelix 5K, this supports parametric EQ up to 20 bands and it does work on PlayStation. There are some crazy settings you can make and adjust to this where even a gaming headset has microphone pass-through. It's a USB DAC with a little volume rocker on it and you can do all these custom EQs for PS5. So if you're worried about doing EQ and you don't have any gear to do so, this is only about 120 bucks and it's definitely worth it. I think it's like 110 right now. And I'll have a link in Amazon for that. So what if we run into a situation where you're doing custom EQ, but you don't have the ability to do full parametric EQ? That's typically what happens if you have something like a Nova 7 for Xbox and you don't have access to Sonar, or if you have the wonderful creative G6 game DAC or a GC7 and you just want to use the built-in 10-band EQ, well, this is again where I think this is going to be a game changer. Now, this work is a little bit more manual, but you still can get closer to a desired result. So we're going to clear out this EQ. We're back to the headset right here, and I want to reset this. So I'll go back to EQ. Now all of my values are 0. So the tedious part here, but this is really important to understand, is you want to clone whatever equalizer adjustments you have. So if you have Dolby Atmos, for example, you see how it says 32, 64, 125, etc. I type those in here. So let's just do 32. And again, I'm going to do this kind of quick, but it'll make sense here in a moment. 125, 250, and we'll go to 500. You go all the way up, obviously you're supposed to, but in the interest of time, we're only going to focus on a few. So then you want to type Q of 1.41, which gets kind of nerdy and sciencey, but 1.41 basically represents a mathematical increase in octaves. So 1000 hertz to 2000 hertz is a Q of 1.41 as far as how you want the bands to interact with it. So I just hit Control A and C and all that, and I'm going to just paste this in everywhere. So I'm building, by doing this, I'm building the same 10-band equalizer that you have in Atmos or SteelSeries Game DAC, or maybe using Corsair IQ or HyperX or Razer Synops. All of that uses the same type of band. And if you see something different, just type that in. If you only have a 5-band, type in your 5 bands, and instead of a Q of 1.41, type 0.707. So we basically just built the entire Atmos equivalent here, right? So in order to hit this curve, all I have to do is start typing in numbers. Like I'm doing -4. That's still not enough. So I'm going to just go straight to -10. And you see how it got closer? Now, if -10 is the most you can go, that's the most you can go. 64 hertz, we can reduce that a little bit. So let's type -3. And look how close I'm starting to get to the curve. 125 hertz is a nice bump to have. Now, that is already pretty much on the money. So this is the difference with parametric EQ. Whereas before, I was able to add an 80 hertz filter and reduce this a little bit. With a graphic equalizer, which is basically a 10-band like this, you can't necessarily do that, but this is still a big improvement because now all this extra deep bass that's making the headset sound a little bit muddy or hard to hear footsteps, we're fixing that. The 250 hertz is up here, and we can reduce that slightly to get rid of some of the boxiness. I don't want to cause the mids to dip too much, but by doing, let's say let's just go straight to -2. Now we're building a custom curve that gets closer to the target. We're going to do, let's go to +1 in the mid-range. And again, this green line, let's just switch to, I guess the green was a good color. We'll go to pink because I think it'll contrast more. And then 1K, that's pretty much on the money. 2K is on the money. So this is close. You're talking a fraction of a decibel. But I do notice there's a gap here in the 3000 hertz area and 4. So what I'm going to do is add 5 decibels to 4. Now this makes the 8 kilohertz too high. So I'm going to go to 8 kilohertz and do -6. So this is where you start playing with it, but look at the result of what we're getting here. You're now able, as an Xbox player, to build and visualize what the byproduct is of your EQ for any game target curve that is released on my site. Now I'm going to be doing Apex and Valorant and Fortnite eventually, and then whatever others come in. But you can already see visually there is a difference in sound here, and that's going to help close the gap of what people with advanced EQ get, so you can have a good experience too. So let's say you've typed in all those numbers and you're happy with the curve. All you have to do is look at the gains here. See how it says -10? So I would go into Dolby Atmos, and I'm going to pull this down to, let's say, -10. I guess I could have gone to -12 with Dolby, which is great. I know the creative products go to -10, so I was just adhering to that. Then we have 64 hertz as -3, and this is a 6 here, so I know I want to go right in the middle of that. 125, I barely have lifted, but you can kind of boost it more if you think the bass is lacking. 250 hertz, -2 dB, so I'm pulling it down approximately 2 dB. This is the unfortunate part of Dolby Atmos, but other programs give you actual numbers. 4000 hertz, we lifted 6 decibels, so we're going to go straight to that 6. You can see it's kind of lined up here. And then 8 kilohertz, we did -6. Now, I just built, and I even listed 500 by decibel, yeah. So we just built on Atmos a custom EQ that works on Xbox and PC without using any other software. And then you can enable a volume leveler, which is like loudness equalization, but for Xbox. So PC players, you're not the only ones with the advantage. This does help soften things like airstrikes to make it easier to hear without blowing your eardrums out. You can turn that on and off, but I do not recommend Sound Virtualizer. The reverbs are a little extreme, but now we just built our own custom EQ. So we're going to quickly talk about EQ software setup. This is only if you don't know how to use this software. Otherwise, just skip to the end here. Again, I have chapters below. So let's say you've installed Sonar and you need to make sure your audio works. Well, when you click on Sonar and Mixer, this is where you choose your game devices that Sonar is sending audio to. So let's say in this particular case, I have the Astro A50X. I would just click on the Astro 50X here. My chat mix, I would do A50X voice, and then my microphone, I would do the A50X mic out. Now this is where I can choose where audio gets routed. This is really helpful for streaming as well, but I don't want to make a whole tutorial on Sonar. One nice thing is once you have audio going to these devices, it enables chat mix. So even if your headset is let's say you have a expensive headphone that doesn't have game to chat mix, you now gave yourself game to chat mix with this software. You have to select this correctly because it's the only way all of these custom equalizer settings are going to work, because it's only changing the EQ for that one device signed in Sonar. In Windows, you have to make sure that your audio output is set to Sonar Gaming, and then everything works from there. Now, Sonar is a great program. As you saw, there's a ton of potential with it, but if you don't want to deal with all of that extra software that you may not use, Equalizer APO is, of course, a nice option. Now, when you first install Equalizer APO, you then want to install Peace. And again, I'll have both links in the description below. But if you click settings here, the reason why I like SteelSeries Sonar is because it always hooks into your Windows audio. Every now and then a Windows update happens that breaks the integration of Equalizer APO. And the way I can tell is if you lower this all the way and you can still hear things just the same volume, your audio is not configured correctly. So what you have to do is click on settings here. It's going to open a new prompt here in a moment. And then if you go to the tab debugging and testing, you're going to see Equalizer APO's configurator. You need to make sure, let's bring this over here, that your audio device that you're trying to manipulate is enabled here. So again, if you have the Astro A50X, you want to click that. Or in this case, I'm using what I usually use is my universal DAC from Shit Audio. I have the Niche Pietus Maximus for my gaming headphones. So that is enabled, and it says Equalizer APO is already installed. If you enable new things and click save, it's going to tell you that you have to reboot or you have to troubleshoot to basically rehook or connect to the device. If it's not working, this is the area where you fix it. But when you first install and run everything, it's going to prompt you to choose which devices you want. So make sure your headset's plugged in when you install Equalizer APO, that way you can select it. All right, so that wraps up this monstrosity of a video. I did things very differently this time, and I hope that you all found it helpful or it gave you something different that you hadn't been using before. So don't forget, I do have that Google form for feedback because this is the start of something great in my opinion. Share this out. Don't forget to like and subscribe. I'd love to see you at the next videos because I'm going to be doing a lot in this space. So thank you all so much for the support, and I'll see you next time. Bye.